You sound jealous that your daughter had a good relationship with your mom and you didn't. Your daughter will remember it.
Nobody had a good relationship with my mother. It's impossible. You can only have good relationships with people who are actually healthy and who are loving and kind and safe. My mother demonstrated behaviors towards my daughter that on the surface might look good. But when you look underneath it, you recognize, well, I recognized, thankfully, and went no contact when my daughter was 6 years old. And thankfully, I recognized that what was going on underneath the surface was going to be very detrimental to the way that my daughter learned to define healthy relationships, love, kindness as opposed to being nice. Nice is, using a behavior to gain favor. Kindness is you actually care about the person and you are just kind. Like there's no agenda kind of thing. Lots of kindness, and none of that kindness came from my mother. Anyway, that to be said, let's break this down a little bit. In the beginning, when I saw my mother being what I thought was kind to my daughter, playing with her, being affectionate with her when she was 10 days old and on from there, on and off, I might add, because there were periods within that first 6 years of my daughter's life where I was no contact with my mother or low contact. That relationship was irretrievably fractured, to say the least, because of things that my mother did to me in my childhood and was continuing to do in my adulthood. However, what I didn't realize was that when my mother was treating me abusively, trying to sabotage my life, which also would have a trickle down effect to my daughter's life. Like, for example, I was trying to get my GED, which I did successfully complete. And my mother tried to sabotage that day so that I wouldn't be able to go get my GED, sit for the test for it. How does that impact the daughter that she has unconditional love for, my daughter, her granddaughter? Well, it makes me not be able to be the best mother, best provider for her possible. But maybe you don't see that, or maybe you just don't know that that's part of my backstory. When I was getting my CNA license to be a home health aide while I was going to go to nursing school, my mother tried to sabotage the day of my state board exam. Again, my increased income, my independence would allow me to provide for the grandchild she loves so much. There's lots of actions that take place with certain types of parents, my mother being a sociopath and a narcissist, that people don't recognize because the only thing that they see is this loving grandmother. So let's talk about the loving grandmother. And yeah, I was jealous when I saw her giving to my daughter what she didn't give to me. But I wasn't jealous in the way that I didn't want my daughter to have it. I was jealous in the way of I wanted that from my mother so much, and it hurt me deeply. At the same time, I did feel joy for my daughter that I thought she was getting the mother I always wanted in the form of a grandmother. And that was good at the time, I thought, because I wanted family. And even if my mother could never love me, if she could love my daughter, that was going to be good enough. I thought the way my mother treated me was because I deserved it. I didn't understand, even though I was looking at my little baby girl, that I was just like her when my mother had me. I didn't make that connection. So here I was watching my mother play with my daughter and be this doting person. I was like, okay, well, my daughter actually deserves all the love in the world. Of course she's going to treat her that way. And I didn't. So of course she treats me the way she treats me. That's legitimately, literally what I thought. I was also 17 years old. I was this. And I was incredibly traumatized to come off the streets. I lived on the streets from 13 to 14 and a half. And then I got my first apartment and a whole thing. And by 17, I had my first baby. my first little pancake, who I really grew up alongside. Anyway, going back to what you're talking about, my daughter will remember. Well, that daughter is turning 42 in August. And she does remember. She remembers lots of things. One of the most heartbreaking things for me to learn that my daughter remembered, even though I did go no contact when she was 5, 6 years old, I think she was closer to 6, was that she learned how to feel guilty because of my mother's behavior. That shook me. I never thought about it. She would elevate my daughter so much and give her so much and make it very clear that everybody else didn't measure up, whether it was food, serving her first, buying her favorite things, and then for my son, giving him whatever was left over. I didn't realize, like, my daughter noticed that. Or she would get these lavish gifts and my son would get like a toy that wasn't age appropriate that he couldn't even play with because he was so much younger. My daughter noticed these things as a 4, 5, and 6-year-old child, and it made her feel bad for her little brother. She noticed the way my mother talked to her grandfather, step-grandfather, and how mean she was to him, and couldn't understand why she couldn't be nice to him but was only nice to her. She felt guilty about that. She felt sad about that. She watched the way my mother treated me and couldn't understand why she didn't like me. She remembers feeling that way. Thank goodness I went no contact, because my daughter was getting these really mixed messages about what love looks like. And she learned to feel guilty as a small child because I, as her mother, exposed her to my mother, hoping for the best and not understanding that I should have expected the worst. Ultimately, I went no contact because my mother wasn't respecting safety boundaries, like not exposing my child to movies like The Poltergeist, which I found out when my little girl woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare. And she told me, Grandma said, "Don't tell you because it's our special time." What the fuck? So yeah, I was jealous. It's true. And I would have sucked up that jealousy for my whole life if my mother had been the kind of mother or grandmother to my daughter that she should have been. And what does that look like? Well, if you really love your grandchildren, you make sure that you role model love for everyone in their life that is valuable to them, for starters. If my mother really loved my daughter, when I was trying to go for higher education, she would have done everything she could to support that. Because one, I was 17, which means I was a minor, and I was her legal responsibility. But more importantly, because she would have wanted the kind of stability coming from her daughter to her granddaughter that made sure that everybody was safe and healthy and well provided for. I appreciate your comment. I know it's not coming from a good place and it doesn't matter to me. I know it's coming from that place of, oh, you're going to have to pay for that when your adult daughter grows up and remembers what you ripped her away from. So fun fact, fun little story, a little more story time. Because my daughter did have some fun memories with her grandmother, it wasn't all about learning about guilt. Because she was treated like, the queen of the universe, because she did get spoiled by her. I don't really believe in the word spoiled, but I think you get my gist here. And also because she had tremendous loving memories of my grandmother, who she didn't know was a part of my CSA, because I wasn't talking about my grandparents at the time, although my daughter did know that I went no contact with them after I went no contact with my mother. Because of all that, she wanted that family really badly. And when she went off to university at 18 years old, she formed a relationship with my mother. And it was much more complicated than that. And I'm not sharing parts of my daughter's journey that I don't think I should share. I'm not even going to ask her about it because I don't think it's relevant to this story. And my daughter's story is her story. This I'm allowed to share because we've talked about it and she's fine. Anyway, imagine that, thinking about what I expose of my beautiful daughter and what I don't expose and what I share and what I don't share. Imagine asking permission to make sure that it's okay. Yes, I've done that. And when I say it's more complicated, there were just other moving pieces at the time that made my daughter vulnerable. I can say that. And so she reached out to my mother and wanted to get to my grandmother and that whole thing. We talked about it quite a bit over the years. And I knew about it at some point. My daughter told me she was in a relationship with my mother at some point. And all I said to her was, well, you're an adult. I trust your decisions. All I ask is that you don't share my life with her. And I don't want to know anything about her life. If there's something you need to talk about in relation to her, that's okay. I'm absolutely here for you. And I left it there. And every now and again, there would be a little something, and we talk about it. It was no big deal to me whatsoever. My mother wasn't in my life. I was safe and all that good stuff. Ultimately, that same mother stole my daughter's baby bracelet. And there were some other incidents that occurred, and my daughter really wanted that bracelet back. Like my mother, the clasp broke, and my mother said, oh, I'll fix it for you. And she took it from my daughter. And every time my daughter asked for it, she'd go, oh, it's in the safe. Oh, it's here. Oh, it's there. And my daughter started to realize that she took a precious memento of hers and had no intention of giving it back because it's control. My daughter wanted childhood photos, mine specifically. My mother wouldn't release those. And she's like, but I want to know what my mother looked like as a little girl. And I don't have any of those pictures, and neither does she. And my mother would just shut her down. What ultimately, and there were lots of things like that. I'm just giving a couple of examples. Ultimately, what ended up happening was that my daughter edited my book. I wrote my book. And I mean, this is well over a decade ago. And she was like, there were a lot of things I knew, Mommy, but there's things in there that I don't even know what to say, kind of thing. And my daughter and one of my other children, my son, also wrote the preface in the book. Anyway, really beautiful. All this to be said, my daughter recognized who my mother was through her own experiences, and then also was recognizing really who I am in a different way. My mother was also smear campaigning me to my daughter and trying to create division during the time that my daughter was in a relationship with her. My daughter wasn't having it because I raised her and she knows who I am. She called my mother one day and she said, on a FaceTime, it really makes me sad that you have the entire family and my mother has no one. And that they all stand with you. And it's because they believe you. And I need you to make that right. I need you to apologize to my mother. I need you to stand up to the family and tell the truth so that she can have the family too. And I look back, it's so naive, right? Because the family knew all along the things that my mother was doing. They experienced her as well, and they witnessed certain things, and they were closing ranks around her. They didn't want the truth because the truth leads to a decision about accountability, right? And my mother was like, I don't know what she said to her, but I do know that she shut down the FaceTime, and that's the last time my daughter spoke to her. So grandmother of the year, right? Mother of the year. Yeah, my daughter does remember. She remembers the mother who raised her before anything else and anyone else.